Good evening and welcome to a very special presentation of Richard French Live, Lest We Forget. On the early morning of June 6, 1944, tens of thousands of Allied troops, they steamed towards the shores of Normandy, France. The mission for these ordinary men, it was no less than the liberation of Nazi-occupied Europe. It was called Operation Overlord, but it is far better known to us as D-Day. Veterans of that day, they say the chilling opening scenes of Saving Private Ryan come closest to describing to other generations the sheer terror that they encountered. Now, these soldiers, they would face withering German gunfire, lethal ocean currents, faulty equipment, and miles of deadly obstacles. Many, they would die that day on the beaches of Omaha and Utah, but those ordinary soldiers, they accomplished the extraordinary, taking the beach and eventually defeating the Nazi Empire once and for all. 65 years later, the number of these modest heroes still among us, it continues to be ravaged. The enemy today, Father Time. That's why it is vital that these stories of veterans be heard before we lose our direct connection to one of America's finest hours and a generation that has been rightfully called America's greatest. 10 years ago, we here at RNN had the privilege of taking 6 D-Day veterans from our region back to the beaches of Normandy. Their emotional journey, one of the most powerful stories we have ever covered. Tonight, we will be joined by the 2 men in that group still with us, Ed Gorman and Joe Pisano, as well as former RNN anchor Rollin Smith, who was the voice of this story. But we begin with the stories of Ed and Joe. When they returned to the beaches, they stormed as young men.
Joe Pisano has been on this beach once before, decades ago. This time, he walks along the sand, stops to pick up a shell souvenir, and remembers the last time he was on these shores. It was June 6, 1944, D-Day. This is Utah Beach.
Joe, first time back on this beach, this spot, 55 years ago. What were you thinking?
I couldn't believe that I'd be back here 55 years later, you know. Looks the same.
Yeah?
Yeah, looks the same, the beach. We come in right over there.
Joe was a member of the 101st Airborne Division in a glider unit, but not on D-Day.
What happened is Rommel had all these here, they called them Rommel's asparagus, all these poles all over in the fields there. So they decided glider landings would be no good. So we went in with the 4th Infantry. We trained to come in by glider, and they stuck us on boats. See, we were out there. We had a battleship in front of us. He was pulverizing the coast with his big 16-inch guns, were they, you know? Blasting away. Next, we saw the bombers coming in, and they bombed the whole coast. And we got the vibration of the battleship right through the water, you know, all that firepower. Then our paratroops come in, we see them coming down in, and we were in the little boats all lined up. The Higgins boats were all starting to come right in at the same time, you know. It was a fantastic show, I call it, you know. It wasn't really a show, but
Yeah.
it was a fantastic operation.
But there were a lot of things he does remember, and probably wishes he didn't.
We got in the hedgerows, there was fighting coming, there was shooting coming from all directions, because you couldn't even see the enemy. It was only till the tanks came, and the tanks come in and they run up and down the hedgerows on the other side. That would clear the Germans. But we were fighting like crazy, you know. A lot of small arms fire and mortar fire.
Yeah.
We didn't know where it was coming from. It was hard to tell.
Joe said at the end of the war, he was considered one of the old men.
I was 23 when I come out. Now, I'm glad I went through it. And I'm proud we went through it all, you know. I'm happy to come back. I was lucky that I come back alive, you know.
Yeah.
Never got a scratch.
The people of Normandy appreciate what Joe and others like him did for their freedom. It was evident everywhere we went. As we walked along Utah Beach with Joe, a Frenchman stopped us and asked him to sign a helmet.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
But the memories of what happened in Normandy so many years ago did not disappear. Ed Gorman takes us back to Omaha Beach.
I look out here and I see that I can see the the boats and the men coming ashore.
Yeah.
I can actually visually see human beings trying to assault this beach.
Ed Gorman still sees a battlefield as he looks out onto this beach. The last time he was here, he wasn't even 20 years old. It was June 6th, 1944, D-Day.
We got off the Rhino, as we called it, onto the beach, and it was just a mass of equipment, men, bodies. The beach was lined with the dead and wounded, and yet we had to work our way up from what you see down there, the water's edge, up to the dune line or the crest of the hills here. And this is clear now. You have to, if you can, picture barbed wire, the defense, the German defense with the steel barricades and booby traps and landmines. And as I look at it now, so quiet and peaceful, I can't help but say to myself, how'd we do it?
Yeah.
How'd we ever get through it?
Ed was a member of the 294th JESCO. It was their job to set up communication on Omaha Beach.
I was a radio man, but if you can visualize our wiremen trying to run wire along this beach from one command post to another, trying to find them first off, under fire for days on end, while the beach was still a very active place and still under fire. For the first couple of days, we were anticipating counterattacks coming up over these hills. We didn't know what to expect. We kept hearing there's going to be a counterattack tonight. All I know is that I remember I didn't sleep for about 60 some odd hours.
As Ed and I walked along the cliffs overlooking Omaha Beach, sights would trigger memories of that day.
Filled in, I'd see where the guns were.
Oh, okay.
Okay, all up in here, and they could do anything they wanted. Another one over there. When we took over the entrenchments and took over their fortifications, and we got in here and was able to go into the trenches, and you looked up and down this beach, and you saw where their guns were placed in the way and every gun had a certain perimeter that it was responsible
a field
for.
of fire.
A field of fire.
Okay.
And you look at it and say, they didn't miss an inch. They didn't miss an inch. And we said, as we came ashore, what the hell are they doing here? We sent so much firepower in here, we thought they would be a walk-in. Our training sort of made certain things second nature to us.
Wow.
What it didn't prepare us for is the devastation that we saw. Even though you see, you know, the dead and the wounded around you, you say, well, it's not going to be me.
But as almost any soldier who was there will tell you, they sometimes wonder why they made it off the beaches alive when others did not.
And I've often felt over the years that God saved me for a reason.
A monument overlooking Omaha Beach remembers men who fought alongside Ed Gorman, men who came to these shores and never left.
I can still see those ships.
Yeah, I bet. I can see them just standing here with you.
Yeah. All out there. All of them.
Well, God bless them.
Yes, all of them. And I pray for them every night. Thank you.
And coming up next, I will sit down with Ed, Joe, and Roland to look back on an incredible journey and an incredible chapter in American history.